So it's interesting. Obviously, Blood Origins, actually under a new name as of a couple of weeks ago, the Origins Foundation. We're a nonprofit. We started a nonprofit 5 years ago, and it's very rare, especially in America, to have a new nonprofit come on the scene that is species specific. Because literally, America is the king of species specific nonprofits. So, Dean, I'll turn it over to you. You guys can introduce yourselves right away. You guys have formed the North American Antelope Foundation?
Pronghorn Foundation.
North American sorry. Obviously, we're going to get
Pronghorn.
into semantics. You got a South African trying to explain what an antelope / pronghorn is here, and Colin's giving me this he's already messed it up. But that's okay. That's the point of this podcast. So, yeah. Dean, introduce yourself first, and then you have started this thing, this new nonprofit foundation.
So Dean Krebs, and I'm from Alexandria, Minnesota, and
the pronghorn capital of the world.
Yeah, we're only probably, 700 miles from the nearest, no, not that much, probably 400 miles from the nearest pronghorn. So not near pronghorn, but I love hunting pronghorn, and I've brought up my kids hunting pronghorn. And so Brock Wall threw out an idea on Hunt Talk, and I jumped on it and said, hey, this sounds like a great idea, because pronghorn do not have a species-specific nonprofit that's dedicated to them. And there's some big differences between pronghorn's needs and the needs of other animals out there. And there's certainly some overlap as well. And we can talk about those a little bit. But that's really why I joined this thing and tried to get this thing off the ground. I had a number. I'm on a number of boards right now, and when this one came up, I was like, I don't have much time, but it's a good opportunity to get in on something and really develop something that I feel strongly about, and the pronghorn need help. So whatever we can do as a foundation to, help pronghorn across their area, we're all in.
Mm-hmm. And Colin, you're from my neck of the woods. We could have done this in person. And you're also in a pronghorn stronghold of the world, Memphis, Tennessee.
That's right. Growing up here in Memphis, you dream about the West and playing Cowboys and Indians. It's just a special thing. And pronghorn have always been an animal that I was interested in. But growing up here in Memphis, there's obviously not any pronghorn anywhere nearby. Was lucky enough to start with a company out of college that I traveled a lot all across the U.S. and spent a good bit of time traveling in Montana and other Western states, and made some friends out there that invited me to come pronghorn hunting, and really fell in love from there, and have been on several trips since then. And just traveling out there seeing them is so awesome. And any way that we can help enhance their numbers and habitats, I'm all for.
Yeah, I have never hunted a pronghorn. I had worked extremely diligently to build amazing points in Wyoming and Montana. I had 7 points in both those states. And I said, okay, back to back, I'm going to do this road trip. I'm going to leave Mississippi and go up to the west. I'm going to hunt Wyoming. I had the areas locked down. I had roads that I was going to run. I had everything locked down. Wyoming first, Montana season backed up to the end of that Wyoming. It was going to be perfect. And situations at my old work forced me to stay home.
Oh.
And I lost literally 14 points in total between the two states on my pronghorn hunt. So I've never been able to do it, and I haven't actually gotten back into the business of getting all of my points again. So I may need to just start again and be diligent again in doing that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the point situation out west, it takes more and more points every year. The point creep is a very real thing. And, what we're trying to do as an organization, we're trying to make the pie bigger, right? So how do we get the more people to get licenses? Well, if we have more animals on the ground, the state wildlife agencies, they can give out more permits. And so, that's certainly not the primary reason that we're doing this, but certainly something that we think about, and we want to make that piece of pie bigger. We want more animals on the ground.
Is that the whole point? Is that the mission of the organization, Colin? Is more antelope on the ground?
More antelope and enhancing their. We want to enhance their populations and their habitat just to keep their legacy going.
And make it sustainable. So pronghorn populations can ebb and flow with the weather. And so we saw a major weather event in the winter of 22-23 in northwestern Colorado, southeastern Wyoming, that killed upwards of 80% of some of the pronghorns. So we have to be careful that we don't measure our success purely on antelope numbers, because a weather event like that comes along and you could say, well, geez, you started this foundation and all of a sudden the antelope numbers are in the tape. Well, that's not necessarily the case. We also want to measure what have we done in terms of habitat, in terms of fencing, in terms of science-based studies to try and help this population along.
Yeah, I don't know. You might know this already, but Blood Origins just invested. Gosh, I think about with the help of the Dallas Safari Club or DSC Foundation, we just invested about $35,000 to $40,000 into a pronghorn connectivity study between Alberta, Montana, and British Columbia, I believe.
Okay.
That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we're very familiar with pronghorn. So who is, obviously it is right now at its very nascent stage. You guys have applied for your 501c3 status. You've got it, or it's still in the process?
I believe we're still in the process. Colin, is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct. We're in the final steps of that process right now.
That's one of the things that we could touch on a little bit, is that we started over a year ago, I believe, and the amount of work and the amount of paperwork that it takes to do it and do it right is mind-boggling. And I think everybody wishes that we could have started, and 2 or 3 months later our paperwork was done and we're doing projects and we're funding stuff, and it just doesn't work that way. And so there's so many different pieces of paperwork that got to be filled out and submitted and approved, and it just takes a lot of time. And the one thing we want to do as a foundation, we're not cutting any corners anywhere. We're doing everything professionally for long-term success. It's sustainable, and so that just takes a lot of time.
You're absolutely correct, and I think that I appreciate you saying that. I think everyone really, doesn't really understand what it takes and the decision-making process when you say, okay, I'm going to become a charity. I'm going to become a 501c3. The amount of work that that needs to happen to get that over the finish line it's a little daunting, because again, there's also these legal ramifications of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And if you don't do it right, jeez.
Yeah, absolutely. It really surprised me. I think I don't know, Colin, if it surprised you how long it took as well, but just getting your house in order so that you can, have your bylaws. I mean, the bylaws takes a long time. You got to go through, you got to find a template, and you got to go through it, and the board of directors go through it, and hey, how about this? And hey, how about that? And someone has a little different opinion, and so you got to talk it out. And, it just takes time. But it was a good process. I mean, I think we all, worked really well, the process we used. And in the end, I think everything is going very well. But it did take time. Yeah.
Colin, how many people on the board?
I think there's about 10 of us on the board.
From all over the United States, it sounds like. Dean from Minnesota, you from Tennessee.
Predominantly from the western U.S., but there are a couple outliers like myself and Dean.
Did you say outlaws or outliers?
Outliers.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question. I guess maybe a better for folks saying, listening to this. Has there been a measurable decrease in pronghorn populations? I know we talked about the winter storm that did knock down a population, but that happens. That's just biological, right? This is part of the system. has there been noticeable trends down, or is it just this constant issue that we're dealing with of increased interest in hunting in the West, which means lower opportunity for people to hunt writ large?
I think looking back the last 10 to 15 years across the entire West, the population has been down. I know tags have been cut in Wyoming due to that severe storm in 22, 23. There was also a severe storm back in, I think, 2016 that knocked the herd back. So that's something that we're always going to deal with is weather concerns and issues like that. But as human population expands and grows and more people are moving west, that's interfering with migration corridors and encroaching on their habitat. And there's a lot of different issues that are facing pronghorn, and we're trying to do our best just to take those head on and do what we can to mitigate the population decreases.
I think one of the things also is the degradation of habitat and the loss of the sagebrush steppe ecosystems. And when you lose habitat, you're going to lose animals on the ground. So that's definitely right in our bullseye of what we want to address and open up areas that are not accessible to pronghorn if we can, and enhance what's there if we can.
So what do you think? Because the flux of obviously the population is something you can't really change. But you're absolutely right. I think it happens regardless of whether, put pronghorn, we're talking about pronghorn right now, but it could be substituted for elephants. It could be substituted for roe deer. It could be substituted for whatever animal. And that today's world is not a sea of habitat anymore with islands of humanity. It's really an island. It's a sea of humans now with these pockets of habitat that we're trying to protect, and we're trying to connect with other pockets of habitat. So if you had to look into a crystal ball, what are the kinds of projects that you guys, or maybe you guys have already got a list of projects that you're like, hey, this is what we are going to focus on and this is what we're going to do?
Yeah, we've got a list of some things we're starting to do. The one thing that is unique to pronghorns that we should touch on is they do not like to jump fences. And they have all the ability in the world to jump fences, but they don't like to do it. They like to go under fences. And so fencing can be a very big problem for pronghorn. Now, if you grew up with deer in deer country, a fence doesn't slow down a white-tailed deer or a mule deer or an elk or anything like that. I mean, it's barely a hindrance to them. They hop right over it and away they go. It's not true for pronghorn. Matter of fact, there's a film that was just released, a short film by the Wyoming Migration Initiative called Unwired. And if you haven't seen that, it's a fantastic film talking about the fencing issue. And they've got radio collar studies that show antelope that they run right up to the fence and then they go back and forth. They don't want to cross it, or they can't cross it for whatever reason. And I'll tell you, I'll take a little aside here. I'll tell you a good little story. So first time I ever go out elk hunting, I bring my 12-year-old daughter out, and she's asking me, plying me with all different types of questions about pronghorn and what they do and what they like to eat and all this different stuff. And I said, well, they don't like to jump fences. Well, she grew up in whitetail country. It didn't make much sense to her. And I'm like, no, really, they don't. She thought I was kidding. I'm like, no, really, they don't like to jump a fence. They just very, very, very rare. And we're driving down the road as we're hunting, and she's asking me this. And all of a sudden we look, and here comes a buck pronghorn running towards the road. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I'm gonna look so smart to my daughter. That buck pronghorn runs up to the fence, hops the fence, through the ditch, over the road, through the ditch, hops the other fence, and away it goes. And my daughter gives me that sideways look like, oh, Dad.
I'm not going to believe anything else that you say.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. It's pretty rare to see them jump a fence. So they have different needs. Another project we were looking at was potentially, some of the quality of the native grasses that are out in the West have degraded to the point where, do we need to do some enhancement of the grasses? And so looking at that type of stuff. There's some radio collar stuff out there. Another unique trait of pronghorn is that their hair falls out very easy. I don't know if you haven't ever seen that. Like a whitetail, you could grab a whitetail by the fur and roll it over. Well, the first time I did that, I ended up with 2 handfuls of hair in my hands.
Mm.
And so that's a unique trait. It comes out easy. And if you put a radio collar on it, like we see with mule deer or with whitetail or elk, or whatever, it doesn't phase them at all. I've seen pictures of pronghorn that are basically hairless from their ears down to their shoulders because the collar has rubbed all the hair off. So they have different needs. So I know there's a group out there that's looking at ear tags, solar powered ear tags. Can that get us the right information? So that might be better suited for pronghorn. Colin, you got anything to add for our projects?
You would think that the biggest projects for you guys could be, well, one, habitat restoration. I know probably juniper removal, or as you said, increasing of the steppe and sagebrush ecosystems. But the other one would be probably, you may get into the whole like land acquisition easement business in terms of protecting habitat.
Yeah, you want to take that one, Colin?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there, and it's just a unique situation with them. Dean had asked other projects that we're working on. There's a couple other projects that we have been discussing as a board with wild horses in a couple different states. And
don't get me started on wild horses. We're getting involved in documentaries on wild horses in Arizona and potentially Nevada, and just trying to tell the truth about what wild horses are doing on the landscape from an ecological decimation perspective.
Absolutely.
Yes. Very detrimental effects on the native animals, of which pronghorn are very much affected by wild horse and burros. Yeah.
So you gave us a story about a fence. So I assume fence removal projects are going to be pretty much up your bailiwick.
Absolutely.
Or rewiring. So not necessarily removal, but they like to go under the bottom wire. So putting non-barbed bottom wire fencing is certainly something, and then the spacing, moving that bottom wire up a little bit, and then they can get under the fence safely, and so not necessarily removal. I mean, we obviously want to work with landowners and ranchers, and they have fences for cattle or whatnot. Absolutely work with them and figure out a way that's amenable to both pronghorn and their livestock.
Great. What about, are there existing pronghorn organizations in the West? Because I want to say that I've seen one in Arizona maybe, or New Mexico, that was like a local, I don't know, state-wide like Pronghorn Foundation or something, right?
Yeah, I think there's a couple out there at the state level. There's nothing out there at the federal level or area wide that covers all the states. And obviously that's something that we've talked about as a board too. The needs of a pronghorn in Arizona are different than the needs of a pronghorn in Montana. Arizona may not get the type of winter weather that the northern area does. So, we're cognizant of that, and we need to make sure that we're addressing pronghorn across their range. And it's just going to be varied needs.
Yeah, I see the Arizona Antelope Foundation. That's the only one I very much remember. Yeah. They do almost like, very, very similar, obviously, work to you guys, habitat and herd recovery efforts. They do raffles to raise money, that kind of stuff. So, well, you guys got a really cool write-up in the Outdoor Life by good old Andrew McQueen.
Yep.
That was very cool.
Yeah, that was kind of right at our launch, which was April 21st. And so people can now go, and we really seen a bump to our membership due to that article and the associated social media that it was on. But yeah, people can now go to pronghornsplural.org and sign up for a membership. We've got some hats and t-shirts and that type of stuff there, and we've got some information about what we're doing, and and how we're doing it and the people involved and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm looking at a map on that article, and that shows what we were talking about in terms of the number across the board. So Texas minus 4% down, Oklahoma minus 26, New Mexico minus 30%, Colorado minus 26, Utah minus 4, Wyoming minus 22, Nebraska minus 20, South Dakota minus 6, North Dakota, where Brock's from, minus 37, the highest number across the board happening in North Dakota, minus 18% in Montana. Only 2 states, Washington and Nevada, increasing their numbers. Across the border, Alberta and Saskatchewan. Sorry, that's it. Alberta and Saskatchewan and Montana. That's the Pronghorn Project. I said BC earlier. It was actually Saskatchewan. They're minus 10 and minus 10% respectively. So, yeah, definitely need somebody, some organization to step up and do something.
Yes, and the reason is they're so fun to watch. If you're a wildlife watcher, they don't. Another unique trait, they don't disappear during the daytime. They're very viewable. Typically, during daylight hours, they don't dive into the deep timber and disappear, so people can go out and watch them. They're so fun to hunt. They're great for new hunters, kids, because you can go out there and you find them and you put a stock on them and you goof it up, and then you go find another one and you stock that one and you goof it up, and you keep doing that until eventually you don't. They are extremely good eating. So we've had some taste tests in my house that we put antelope, elk, mule deer, whitetail, and beef. That was our taste tests, and antelope and elk came out tied at number 1. Sometimes they get a little bit of a bad rap, and I really think that's because of 2 reasons. One, I mentioned earlier that the hair comes out really easy, and if you get in there in that sagebrush, and so their hair is very pungent, I guess would be the right word, and it gets on the meat, and now you have some meat that has been tainted with that sagebrush taste, and so people might not like that. The other thing is that typically, many times you're hunting them, it's pretty warm. And so meat care is so important to get that meat cooled down. But if you took the best beef in the world and you put it at 95 degrees and kept the hide on and drove it around in your truck for 3 days, it probably wouldn't taste real good either.
Yep, agreed. So tell me about, it seems like that article, it did note that there was another conservation group called exactly the same thing. Do we know who they are? Because I'm always very cognizant of, and at the beginning of Blood Origins wasn't actually called Blood Origins. We were called something else. And we changed our name right then and there because of somebody else in the space that potentially could overlap with us, or we be confused with them, or we could be associated with them if they did something essentially a little silly and you got wrapped up in the whole legal, political drama of it.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. It's not a group that I'm really familiar with. I think it's been a good bit of time since they started their organization, and they kind of went away.
They're defunct now and have been for years.
Yep,
so they're not doing anything. Okay.
And we're confident that that is the case. They're not going to raise their head up and go, "Oh, hey, that's our name," and we want it back.
Yep. Brock reached out to I think somebody that that was involved at one point in time.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. So if people want more information on the North American Pronghorn Foundation, not Antelope Foundation, where can they find more information of that?
Pronghorns.org, and that's plural.
Oh, that is a cool freaking web handle, man. That was very clever to get that. Pronghorns.org. That's good.
Yes. And the best part was it was free. Some of the other ones that I think it cost us $10 or something.
Yeah, $10. $10 to GoDaddy or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the other ones that we looked at were not free, and then came up with the idea of put an S on the end of that, Pronghorns, and oh geez, that's free. Bingo.
Done. Exactly. Very cool. Okay, and so how can people join? What is there membership set up? What does that look like, Colin?
Yeah, we've got some membership opportunities, so you can go onto our website, join. We've got some merchandise for sale. We've got a blog that has some updates on what's going on. We're going to have a newsletter that kind of gives a periodical update of different things we're working on and initiatives that we're putting forth.
So on the website, it says your life membership coming soon, sold out. Did you sell out of life members already?
No. It's still coming soon. So there's two different memberships levels right now. You got your standard membership and then your sponsor membership. We, back to how much work it is to get it up and going. We had to punt a little bit on our life membership level, and just to determine how we're going to handle that. There are some considerations with a life membership level different than the other membership levels. So we got to put some more thought into that, but we wanted to get rolling right away and get out there, and we didn't want that to hang us up.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, cool. If anybody's interested, go to pronghorns.org. You can go to the join page. There's also a donate button, obviously. So you can make donations, and then you can buy there's some hats and some t-shirts, as well as a sticker pack. And obviously you can become an annual member at $35 a year, or an annual sponsorship membership at $250 a year. Final words, Dean?
For people listening, do a little research into pronghorns if you don't know much about them. They're really neat animals. They're unique to North America. Their closest relative is the giraffe, ironically. They are not antelope. They are pronghorn. Antelope is something everybody calls them. I do it myself. Probably did it half a dozen times on this.
I did it in the beginning of this podcast.
Exactly.
And got absolutely told no.
Yeah, exactly. But we all do it. I mean, it is what it is. But they are pronghorn, very unique. Go to our website, check us out, see what we're all about, and keep tabs on what we're doing. And we're trying to build this thing. So a little bit of patience is needed because we are starting. We're all volunteers. There's nobody paid for anything on this. So, we're trying to build this thing for the long term. So we're gonna do it right, and have a lot of fun doing it. I mean, it is kind of fun to be on the beginning level of this thing and build something from scratch. And we've got a lot of help from a lot of people. Thank you so much for having us on here and getting the word out to your audience, and hopefully they learn just a little bit about us and about pronghorn today, and we'll follow up on that.
Absolutely. Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us on and letting us use your platform to try to springboard us and to getting this started up from nothing, really.
Yeah, too easy. Our pleasure. And as I said, pronghorns.org, go check them out, get an annual membership, help them out. And one day I'm going to hunt a pronghorn, not an antelope, a pronghorn.
Yes.
And it'll be good stuff. Thanks, boys.
Thank you.
Thank you.